Miracle League. That, and there's a sports banquet on November 16th. I'm glad you're still here, Jamie. And we have sports stars, and and Mohegan Sun is going to host the event. It's going to be a big deal event. Again, raising money for the Miracle League. We're coming close to $200,000 of raised money in hand, plus a donation from Kevin Ollie, who has generously donated money from his foundation for the building of Miracle League basketball courts for special situations for handicapped kids.
Is that new scope? Was that initially planned, or is that just Kevin added
No, but
that?
but he's building
Kevin
them
needs some
around
good press.
New England. Yeah, it's a good positive thing. He's been doing it for a while, and raises money using his name for this for a while. It's a perfect synergistic situation. And it'll be good actually on the grounds of Flanders School, because if you're talking about a 6-year-old kid, they can't reach the 10-foot basket, however high it is. So the kids will be able to use it as well. This town doesn't shut down on Labor Day. This Friday, for example, Jeffrey's Rainbow Run for the scholarship fund. There's a movie at McCook's, and the Children's Museum's having their gala all on the same night. And I have joined the CCM Legislative Committee to help shape the conversation in support, in opposition, and suggestion of legislation in the upcoming session. So I look forward to be able to update you even closer than I have in the past with things that are going on up at the State House, this will be a long session, so there'll be a lot of activity up there. That's all I have tonight.
You mentioned the town being very active in the school projects. Is it about what you expected? Is it more than expected? Is it
School projects or the activity in town?
the school projects?
Yeah,
When you were
they're
talking
right
about the
on.
building projects.
They are right on schedule. Of course, we've changed our building inspector. Joe Smith resigned and took another job voluntarily, might add. There's something on Facebook that said he got fired. He did not. He served our town very well for over 20 years, as we all know. And it took another job, and that's what happens sometimes in the industry. Steve Way was the part-timer that Joe had, and he voluntarily offered to go full-time. And after consideration, we took that on as an interim situation, and we'll reevaluate in 6 months. In the meantime, Joe wisely, knowing what he was doing, put Steve fully in charge of the building project. So Steve was fully on board with the schools, and was able to step into that role rather swiftly and with command. So
my question was, when you were going through your different activities, it felt like the town is very involved.
We're very involved.
With this. Is it more
Yeah.
than, less than, or about what you expected for level of effort?
This about what I expected, I suppose. I didn't put a ton of thought into it. I know that building inspector was going to be busy all the time. Fire marshal office, sort of, but they're in there every day, making sure things are good. So it's probably a higher level, but it's the kind of town we have. It's the kind of department heads we have. We just step up.
No, during the process, you
Yeah.
said that you expected the town to have extra work because of the project, that this project wasn't going to pay for because we would have to just reimburse them. And I'm just trying to get a feel for it.
There's that. We're slipping in our building permits. If you're out there trying to build a deck right now, you know that we're taking a long time to get your building permit approved. Yeah, we're inundated. There's just a lot of activity. There's homeowners that are just and contractors that are doing a lot of work in our town, and things are slipping a little bit, but they're getting to them. They only have a certain number of days to get to them. They're getting to them, but a lot of activity downstairs.
Thank you.
That adds to it.
Thank you. Any other questions for our first selectman?
So, yeah, speaking of paving on Main Street, so you said that's going from that's why we put the water supply line down into the Cheney Park, right? We wanted that in first before they paved. What's the status of the bathrooms at Cheney Park? I thought they would be in this summer.
Trailer arrived last week. We've put off that project to do other projects like Saunders Point, and there's a project up in Walnut Hill we're trying to finish up before the fall. And we're late in the season, and the trailer got delayed. We just decided to put it off until the spring.
So where do we keep it?
Trailers undercover at the town garage. I believe at Roxbury Road. That garage, the old garage.
And
And that was always the plan.
And that's where it's always going to winter.
Well, yeah, it was supposed to go in by
Yeah.
Memorial Day, as I
Right.
recall.
We got delayed, and we reported that at one point, that we were going to be delayed on the trailer. They oversold it to us, that they were going to have it, and they didn't. And literally, we just received it last week. So, first week in September, we received it. So, no point getting it in now and doing the work. As we'd be pulling it on October 1st.
Well, no, that makes
Yeah.
sense, but I just
Yeah.
thought when did we allocate funding for that? That was a while ago.
Spring.
Well, the order was placed in March of this year, and as Mr. Nickerson said, we only took delivery of it last week. So it took them 6 months to construct it for us.
Wow. That's a long time for a prefab building. Okay.
Other questions?
No.
Thank you, sir. Director of Finance.
Oh, I'm done.
You're done.
Done.
Stick a fork in them.
The reports for October were included in your packages. On the monthly summary, you'll know, August is also, we have like 1 day in August for the initial collection, so taxes were $6.9 million. Everything else, is pretty much happening as expected. You'll notice on the revenues that have been highlighted, the insurance reimbursement, that is from KERMA. They have annually been giving like a rebate of sorts to cities and towns that participate in their program. Ours was $59,265, which it was above what we projected, so that's always good news. You'll note our year-to-date expenditures are a little above the prior year. Part of the reason for that is the town and the board, we've accelerated our insurance payments into the self-insurance fund to keep it, the cash flow going on, a better basis than it had been. On the expenditure side, we paid our annual stipend to the Ledgelight Health District. That might be of particular interest to you. Everything else is pretty much ordinary. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
On Ledgelight, how is that going over the last few years? As far as, this is 139,000, like what was it last year, the year before?
Actually, they have been keeping the fee level, our payment to them, the annual payment has been pretty level in the budget over the last few years, because they did decrease not the population, but the fee that they charge per, the per person fee, they've kept it level. They even decreased it a little bit. And then I believe our population, we actually had a decrease in this year's budget, and that's because our population went down a little bit. And that's really related to the prison. Because
I
they're
know
part
during
of
the
that count.
budget season, you were very happy with them. You seemed happy, if I remember right.
The services we get are far and above what we ever experienced back in the 80s and 90s when we had, a very dedicated sanitarium, but that's really all we had as far as a health district goes. And we have all sorts of services now we get from Ledgelight. And I'm very impressed with their professionalism and their attention to detail and how they come out and support us anytime we ask.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to talk about the health insurance tracking?
I will. I'll just mention in the budget, keeping an eye on the emergency services, dispatch overtime, Niantic Fire Department part-time firefighters. Their expenditures are a little above, like what the average per monthly would be. The highway regular overtime is a little higher expended, but that could be because we've just gone through the summer months.
Wasn't part of the justification for hiring another dispatcher was so that we had less overtime?
It's, but when I went through the budget, it is a little higher than, what the average monthly expense should be to date. But yes, that was one of the points. So, I'm just kind of mentioning that to you.
So are we looking at that? I mean, you're reporting it, that's what we asked you to do. Are we
Yeah.
looking at that?
First up here.
Okay,
I'll talk to Mike.
yeah,
Chief.
that'd be great, thanks.
But for you to know that off the top of your head means that, yeah, you're looking at it, you just haven't driven it home yet, I would think. You got somebody else that's gonna help you drive it home.
They're still, listen, we'll talk to them. They've been struggling with personnel and getting people to fill, and I know that there was an issue with that. As they struggled to get the right people involved, they kind of thinned their part-time herd, which caused full-timers to have to be called in, which is driving your overtime.
Which was
That was a period of time, that little period of time may have been the spike here, but maybe they can find the balance.
Who's responsible for getting the part-timers? I mean, is it the fact that they're not doing as much work to try to find the part-timers for the overtime, or is it?
I can't answer that. I'll ask Chief Finkelstein and be able to respond to that. I don't know what he's doing to fill the part-time shifts and all that. We have, it's a different job now. It's not just grab somebody and show them how to answer the phone. I mean, there's certifications now that are far deeper than
As
what
in
we
like
were used to in the past.
2018, or as in like these certifications are
As of 16 months ago, because of the.
During the budget process, he described all that, about how he had part-timers that were gonna go full-timers and the part-timers were gonna be backfilled with. And it
Right.
seemed like there was a holistic plan that
Right.
says, we know what we're doing, we've got a plan in place, and trust us, everything's gonna turn out fine. So I am absolutely sure that everything's gonna turn out fine. We just need to know if this is just a bump in the road. And
They have a
everything.
finite amount of money and they'll somehow make it to the end. And I'll speak to him to make sure he knows that.
Thank you. Any other we're gonna still go through this, I'm sorry, we didn't talk about the insurance yet.
So, I did give you, an update on the health insurance, and I did it like as current as possible. I did, if you look in the, upper left-hand corner, I decided to add how many large claims we have. So for the first 2 months of the fiscal year, we're already reporting 3 large claims. None of the 3 claims have reached the $125,000 stop loss limit. But they've exceeded the 50% point, which is $62,500. So their total so far is $219,000. Then in the upper right corner, I just make a note of our prior year claims that we suppressed. So in other words, in May and June, our payments were not being taken out of our account. We had talked about that. It didn't have to give us a chance to build our cash reserve back up. So they held off. Aetna was good enough. They did craft an agreement with us where they stopped taking payments, our daily payments from our account, and waited until August 1st. So I just kind of highlighted that up in the corner so we have that information as well. And so if you look at the bottom, the top row indicates for each of the 3 months so far, through the 11th day of the month, this is what the claims were. So in July, it was $459,000, August 180, and then in September, it's $267,000. I kind of do that to track month to month to get an estimate of how I think a month will go. And then the line under it shows what the claims were at the end of the month for last year. So in the month of July, our claims were a little bit less than they were last year in July. If you look at August, the claims this August were $190,000 greater than they were last August. And September is ongoing, so that it's just kind of not showing what it is in the other month. So this is the update for health insurance at this point. So.
And 2 whole months probably doesn't tell a trend yet, but last year the average for the month, for the year was 733, I think. Does that sound about right?
About that, yeah.
So it doesn't sound like we're inconsistent with last year.
So.
It doesn't sound like what?
It sounds like we're consistent with last year. Doesn't sound like we're burning at a higher rate than we did last year. Sounds,
No, numbers are.
from 50,000 feet, it looks about the same.
So we're putting, I'm trying to just zoom out here. With the premium increase that we've asked the teachers to pay is not going into effect until next year, right? That
No, it's
28
effective this year.
Okay, so I guess I'm looking for, in my mind, I'm looking for some kind of a trend line that says with the increased premiums, or just some tool that can tell me whether we're gonna be on track and how we can get this should I call this an underfund?
Well,
Underfunding?
here's my thought, and
You understand where I'm going with
Yeah.
this? How do we
So-
get out of the hole?
I think that after the first 6 months of activity this fiscal year, then at that point, that'll be a good point for us to take a look at, start really doing an estimate of how we think the fund might end at the end of the year. We kind of need the first 6 months of activity to be able to track that and see how it'll work.
Yeah, because that's really important to see, because that's a big chunk of money, and I'm very interested to see if we're gonna, because
Understood.
yeah, we're not getting there, it's gonna be hard to make up, so. All right, thanks.
To stay on the health insurance subject for just a tad, maybe it should have been in my report, so if you don't mind me tagging on here. We've worked pretty hard in reviewing the health insurance, and I know Lisa sat in on a meeting over at the Board of Ed about health insurance. I can speak in general terms that we are seriously considering moving to the Connecticut 2.0 state employee plan. How we get there is tough because we're self-insured. Why that's tough is because June 30th, we start paying premium to the Connecticut plan, yet we have trailing claims that come in for months. Sometimes a health insurance bill might not be for 6 months, some of the big surgeries and such. And those all have to be paid by the self-insured, and we don't have a reserve. We don't have that chunk of money and say, no problem, we got $500,000, we got $800,000 covered for that trailing claim
We
list.
call that run out, right? Isn't
Run
it?
out or IBNR, insured
Incurred
but
but
not
not reported.
incurred but not
Incurred but not
reported. So anything after 11:59 on June 30th. We're getting there. We're also at that point that what if this is the year that claims finally settle down and we're looking at a 2% increase or a 5% increase? That happened a whole lot just a decade ago, right? Different health insurance market now. This is Obamacare, with different costs associated and different people are covered. Not political, of course. But it's just what it is. It's the nature, it's the real world. What if this is the year? And that's with a 28% increase, this could be the year that we even out. And then why would we want to go to the Connecticut 2.0 plan and go pay 5% more? So that's being negotiated as there's various contracts, union contracts throughout the town, board side, town side. That language is being negotiated right now, and more to come on that. But that's what we're struggling with. I've spent the better part of the summer working with our health insurance consultant, but also with the unions and with Jeff. We've been kind of partnering up weekly, talking about this and crafting this, so the taxpayers don't get burnt.
So you put words in the contract such that if you do get to the point that you think it's cost effective to go to the Connecticut 2.0, you have the right to do that.
We have the right to do that, right? They're begging for it. So there's that side saying, well, you might want it, but I got IBNR that I got to worry about. So we have to make sure the
Risk
trend.
versus benefit.
Yeah.
That's-
So the run out, if you will, is the rub, right? If we were staying with the same provider, if that's the right word, insurance company, I guess, they would just be picking up the claims for the next year. But as soon as you snap the chalk and have the step change, you got to deal with the.
That's the difficulty. And you're not going to get the premium share. So the taxpayers, the town, the board, will be on the hook for 100% of the IBNR. Because the premium share of the teacher, that 17% that he or she pays, is going to Connecticut 2.0 plan. right?
What was the run out last year?
So, it's like.
Still coming in?
Well, I don't have, the insurance provider provides me that information like at the end of this month, what it will be for 6/30/18. But the prior year, it was 867, I believe. But the year before that, it was over 900,000. So even though we had a bad year last year, the IBNR did come down. So it kind of like, it goes up and down as the different claims.
So you gotta
Wow.
justify a 5% increase plus $1 million bogey. That's painful.
Right.
That's painful.
So,
Or-
It takes a long time to
Connecticut
get that money
2.0
back.
sorry, Connecticut 2.0 is 5% more? Is that what I heard you say?
Those rates haven't been established yet for next year. They do it three quarters in advance, but we would know.
So what's the
July.
plus side of going to Connecticut 2.0?
What's the
Plus side?
better coverage, steady rates. So
Risk
we're
goes
not,
to zero.
we're not at the craps table anymore. Like we've been, like we've all struggled with the craps table. We don't know the next time we meet what that number's gonna be. With being in the state plan, we don't care.
Don't care about claims.
We don't care.
Don't care.
And we're not individually rated. The entire state of Connecticut with 200,000 members in
Right.
it is rated. So we share the pool. So it's.
So we're not self-insured with the Connecticut?
No, this is a state plan. It's not negotiated. They have a number. It's a number.
So the
That's what it
premiums would
is.
still be, well, would be 5% more, but the coverage would be better, and it's more stable in the longer run.
Stable.
Is that what I'm
Stable.
hearing?
It's just like going out and buying regular insurance.
So if you
It's a
had
stable number.
12 people on long-term disability or 2 people on long-term disability, doesn't matter. The
Right.
cost to the town's the same.
Correct.
Do we still need a broker do we still need a
Yes.
Brown and Root, if you will?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
Jamie's saying no, and you're saying yes.
You go ahead.
Yeah, so, I would say, this is something that, as Mark and I meet with, the superintendent and, the board's finance director, we will be discussing that issue. I would venture to say that initially, when we make the transition, we'll need their assistance, because going from one insurance carrier to another it's a major undertaking, and so, their assistance will be needed at that time. So, we'll have to make a determination, do we want to look at keeping them on for like the first quarter or half a year? I mean, that's something we're going to have to look at and
Because
discuss.
we talked about that cost at the meeting. What is it, $12 per insured per month? So it turns out that Brown, Brown and Root, oh, I keep saying Brown and Root. Brown and Root is a construction company, I'm sorry. They get like $165,000.
Their cost is $75,000 a year.
No,
I have it in writing.
so I don't remember us talking about that at the meeting.
I
I'm
know.
talking to
So-
Jamie.
You really can't.
No, you can't, because she's not on the agenda.
Well, so,
So it's $75,000 a year is a tack-on cost to this program.
are you,
And
with
within-
respect, are you sure that's not a month? With respect, I say that, because
I looked at the contract.
it's a year, you're positive of that?
Consulting fee.
Okay, because that's not,
Yeah.
Mark,
It might be 75,000 each side, town and board, but I don't think so. I think it's 75 a year.
so Anna and Mark, at the 6-month point, do you think that you all and Brown will have enough information and enough data, comparison data, so that you can make that decision?
Our plan is to look at the trend in March and be able to make an intelligent decision on which way to go.
Will Brown do that analysis for you? That's part of their $75,000 consulting fee? Okay,
You know?
okay.
It's just still
The
gotta-
onboarding with the state plan is difficult because there's this, the wellness checks that you have to do in order to qualify for the rates. And we want everybody involved with that, so we're paying a lower rate per person, because we would also incur that cost if they're paying a higher rate, if they don't qualify for the 10% off because they got their blood pressure checked and they did the stress tests and all the things they do based on their age. That's very difficult. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of different doctors you have to see in clinics. So we got to make sure we get that done. That onboarding is tough, and then the ongoing thing becomes easier and easier. And once we're on that plan, we should be able to release ourselves from healthcare consultants. I agree, but I would think it's a good year into the process. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. I've never been through this before, so we'll talk about that. There is a danger as they take on more and more towns, especially
risk pool.
especially with ours. Our
Aging.
claim record is a spike in the rates at some point, and we'll have a 3-year commitment with the state that we're going to be committed to this for 3 years when we make that change. So that's part of the conversation we'll have in March.
We may get to this discussion later when we're talking about the four-town wage and benefit analysis sheets that we've gotten. But can you summarize at this point in terms of what you have found with other towns and what have they been through something very similar to what you're going through? Is there anyone close that looks and feels like East Lyme in terms of maybe an aging town employee population, et cetera, et cetera? Is there one town that sticks out to you more than
A lot
others?
of towns are jumping to the Connecticut 2.0 plan.
Okay.
That's what it is. A lot of towns are jumping on this right
Okay.
now.
It's
It's
the-
scary.
Yeah, it's the best deal around maybe at the moment.
Right now, it's the best
Right.
deal around. And when we looked at it a couple of years ago, it wasn't.
Has the town explored at all speaking with local hospitals and those methods of trying to come up with plans? I don't know the details of those, but I know that is one way. That
It's
you
one
can-
way, and I've had
yeah.
that discussion, if not here, I've had it. And that's kind of the wave of the future,
Okay,
is doing a consortium. It would be too
Mhm.
daunting for us to do it on our own.
okay,
Just to go start negotiating.
Right.
But there's been discussion among COG members, Council of
Mhm.
Government
Okay.
members, of putting something together. But right now, this seems to be the place to go, and
Okay.
this is where we'll start.
okay. That may still be something to just even ask about, like
Yeah.
just to have that out there in case
I can
that
see
there's
it
a
happening.
willingness,
Yeah.
especially with all the changes in hospital structure locally and Yale taking over everything and the ability of them to provide that kind of service. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Please ask.
On the state plan, he said there's a 3-year commitment by the town. Is that also, the rate is gonna be stable for 3 years?
No. It's adjusted quarterly, in fact, but they publish 3 quarters in advance. No, it won't be stable, and that's the gamble. There is a penalty to leave, and sometimes that penalty is worth paying if that rate goes up too much. And by the 3rd year, the penalty is not a lot. So, really, we could bail if things get out of hand.
And you may not go back to Brown and Brown?
We're using Brown & Brown as a consultant. They're not our health insurance provider. So
the
there are
Aetna-
consultants and
Right now, it's Aetna,
they're
through
doing-
them. But
Yes.
they would say maybe Aetna, maybe not.
Right. Well, they just help us and they guide us through
Right.
intelligent health insurance decisions and
Yeah.
do rates and do comparisons for us. And, part of the switch and what they're working on right now for us is what we have a certain, we have a group of people that have prescription plans. And when we move over to the state plan, some of those prescriptions will not be covered. And there'll be different deductibles involved, and there'll be different generics involved and all that. And they're running that report for us right now, because that's a critical question, is what's going to happen to our population. So those are the kind of things we have to also look at.
Okay.
That's part of our due diligence when we present that to the unions and to the work groups.
Any other questions for our Director of Finance?
Should we, if we had to go back to Aetna, or if we had to go back to what do you call it? If it's not the state, what do you call it, an open market?
Well, we're self-insured.
Yeah, but I mean, to go back to the marketplace and
By regular
Is that what you just call
standard
it? Regular
insurance, it's standard insurance where you pay.
I thought there was
a
some new name for
you
it.
set premium.
Yeah, so we would still
regular.
consider bidding out our consultant, right, like we talked about for Brown and Brown. Because I know I brought it up and said, do we ever go out and bid for, we talked about that at the Board of Ed
Yes,
meeting,
at
as a
the
matter of
last
fact.
meeting.
Well, I didn't talk about it, but the Board of Ed talked about it. And I said, we talked about it on the Board of Finance as well.
I'm not comfortable right now changing. It'll be like changing my lawyer right in the middle of a trial.
Well, no, we wouldn't do it now because
Yeah.
we're considering going to the state. But what I'm saying is if it turns out that the state insurance, the 2.0, is not for us, and we wanted to go back,
Sure.
I would like to think that we would bid out the consultant service and not necessarily go back to Brown and Brown. Because,
We could look at that separately. Again, I consider the consultants a consultant, much like the town lawyers are. That they're trusted advisors, and it's Brown and Brown who do bidding for us. We bid our health insurance for the last couple of years, as you know. We went out to the marketplace and tried to find other carriers. The fee that Brown and Brown charges, we can make sure that they're paying a competitive rate. But there's also some value in trusting them and working with them and them knowing our history. So
Yeah.
they're not agents. They're not insurance agents. They're consultants, much like our lawyers, much like Ed O'Connell. And we wouldn't think of moving away from Ed O'Connell. He wrote the charter in 1878.
Nice.
so I have a different
but
view. Yeah, I have a different view, and I would
Okay.
like it recorded because I think it's important